Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Saw you guys' video on Baker Mayfield, and y'all made a comment that he was a bust. I think that's a terrible take, and I can see that Brown fans are feeling real salty about it. But if Baker Mayfield's a bust, Trevor Lawrence is a bust. He has worse stats and he's the number one pick also. How are you a bust when you're the rookie of the year your first year? He gets a pass just like Trevor Lawrence gets a pass for year 2 with Freddie Kitchens, who hasn't been a head coach since he was fired. Year 3, what does he do? Win 11 games and goes to the playoffs, wins the playoff game, and nearly beats Kansas. And year 4, gets injured week 2 and plays injured. That's it. That's not a bust. Right now, he's playing great. Cleveland would give anything to go back and change that. Keep all their money, keep their draft picks, and keep building with Baker. Yeah, I don't buy your take. It's okay to say you were wrong.
No, I wasn't wrong. If you think Baker Mayfield should have been the number 1 overall pick in that draft, you have a terrible take. Should have been Josh Allen. I'd listen to Lamar Jackson. Baker Mayfield, they did a redraft 5 years after the 2018 draft that Baker Mayfield was number 1 overall in. Wasn't the first overall pick, wasn't a first round pick, wasn't a second round pick. They only did 2 rounds. He wasn't even in it. The reason Baker Mayfield is a bust isn't that he's a bad quarterback. It's that he was taken number 1 overall. If he was taken 20, 18, okay, you can live with that. Number 1 overall picks often end up being busts. They should have had Josh Allen. They should have had Lamar Jackson. They took Baker Mayfield. And now they got to scramble to try to recover from it. Baker Mayfield's also been with 4 teams. A number 1 overall pick that's been with 4 teams is a bust. I'm sorry. I don't dislike Baker Mayfield. I think he's a slightly above average to average NFL quarterback. But as a number 1 overall pick, he's a bust. Let's welcome in Nick Cairns, co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Nick, I know you are one of the guys that wishes he was back in Cleveland, and I get that. But they messed up the number 1 overall pick when they took Baker Mayfield, period.
I guess this has 2 parts. Number 1, anytime you're taking a guy number 1 overall, you're taking him to be your franchise quarterback, the future of your team for a decade plus. And I very much would agree with you that when they put that set of expectations on Baker, selecting him number 1 overall, that's the standard you're holding him to. So you look at it, we're 5 years later now. Is it 6 years?
6 years.
I'm not sure.
It's 6.
6 years. 6 years. Time flies. He's not on the team. And you're right. He did have a couple stops in between getting to the Buccaneers and getting paid by them. So I wouldn't say that Baker's a bad quarterback, but when you put the standard and you look at the other quarterbacks that were available, I guess begrudgingly, I got to call that a bust because of what the other 2, what Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have become for their teams and what you were hoping to get and what any team picking number 1 overall would hope to get.
Well, and you bring up Trevor Lawrence. He's 20-31 as a starting quarterback. They've never won more than 9 games with him. So it's still, maybe they can rescue it. The point is, number 1 overall picks are busts more often than they're not. I mean, Myles Garrett, not a bust. He was number 1 overall pick. Joe Burrow, number 1 overall pick. That's the standard that Baker Mayfield gets held to. It may not be fair to him, but that's the standard. And you know what? I'm happy that I don't dislike him even a little. I'm glad he's doing well in Tampa. I have nothing against the guy. But as a number 1 overall pick, bad pick. Shame on the Browns.
You got to wonder if Baker doesn't go on that journey with multiple teams, if he gets to the point where he's at now, because I don't think it would have happened in Cleveland. I think that bridge got thoroughly burned.
Yeah, it did. But you know what? He learned and moved on. It's time for Browns fans to move on as well. He's doing well. Good for him.